Well, hey everyone, Athena Dean Holtz here, and welcome to the Redeemed and Restored broadcast on my YouTube channel, where we connect every Friday so that together we can intentionally discover the faithfulness of God. Today's episode of Redeemed and Restored is entitled, God Gave Me Back My Voice. And when I think about our voices as believers and how much power is contained in our praise and proclamation of God's goodness and the truth of His Word, I cannot help but be absolutely amazed at the enemy's predictable strategy to silence those who have experienced healing and redemption after the most traumatic times. While the enemy of our souls shouts, "No one wants to listen to you. You have gone too far for forgiveness, and you do not deserve to have a voice," God whispers, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. For I, the Lord your God, will be with you wherever you go." Joshua 1:9. Believe me when I say whatever God loves, Satan hates. God loves it when you speak up about His saving power. But the enemy will do everything he can to destroy your voice and silence you. He will work hard to wear you out, ruin your testimony, and just push you to the brink of despair so that you feel utterly worthless to speak on God's behalf. We must not listen to his lies, and that is all they are. We have to remember there is power in the word of our testimony and all that God shows us. Revelation 12:11 says, "We overcome him, our enemy, by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of our testimony, and not loving our lives unto death." There is power in the story he has given you to proclaim. So hey, I am shooting the intro to this episode in my home office where I record my weekly podcasts and this broadcast/podcast. I'm no longer in a formal studio, but God is still allowing me to proclaim his faithfulness over the airwaves through both podcasts. He amazes me at the ways he opens doors for me to be obedient to his call on my life, to use my voice for change and for hope. So hey, you know the drill. Be sure to like, follow, share, comment, click on the notification bell in one of those corners. Maybe even start a conversation underneath the discussion tab. So hey, let's get started. Well, hey everyone, Athena Dean Holtz here for this week's edition of Redeemed and Restored. Today's segment is titled, God Gave Me Back My Voice. Arriving in San Antonio, a friend encouraged me to visit a healing center for prayer, knowing of the many years of abuse I'd endured. I went not knowing what to expect, and after watching a sermon video, we broke up into small groups where we were encouraged to pray for one another. I didn't really know anyone, no one knew me. After a few prayers, the woman who was standing to my left looked at me and just said, "You know, every time I start to pray for you, I see you behind a microphone with headphones on. I don't know if this is a new area for you, but it feels like you're going to do something with radio." To which I, of course, "Blah!" I'm sure she must have seen the look of delight on my face. I always loved doing radio interviews over the years that I represented Point Man Ministries or just different things, then Wine Press Publishing, then with my books, doing interviews for those. I did a ton of radio and TV interviews when my first book came out, Consumed by Success. And Then she went on to say, as I prayed more, I saw this black box, and when I opened it, the interior was black velvet and there was a gold microphone inside. She says, I believe you're going to speak for God. Well, my mind was immediately spinning with ideas. I had a ton of friends in radio. Many had interviewed me over the years. Many were publicists with strong media connections. I started thinking about what I could do to garner support for a radio show, even though I had no idea what that would look like. I mean, I didn't even listen to Christian radio back then. Back in the early 90s, I ran a robust radio ad campaign when I was selling a network marketing weight loss product, and I saw the value and the power of radio. And I'd been interviewed hundreds of times in the late 80s and 90s, so this was an area I definitely felt comfortable in. And here I was, wondering what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I mean, I'm 58 now at that point, feeling as though I was having to reinvent myself and start over in a completely new industry. It seemed like a God idea. But every time I got quiet and thought it through, that still small voice said, just take care of your mama. In the past, I would have silenced that voice and gone gangbusters into making a radio career my next focus, using it to self-medicate any remaining pain that continued to haunt me. And believe me, there was still plenty. But I knew how to make things happen. So I easily could have created a theme and started local, going on to syndication across the country. I mean, I knew I could pull it off. But thank God he won out. I listened to that quiet whisper and I obeyed. I put it on the back burner, did not think about it again, went back to my brother's house and committed my time to ministering to my mom. It was mid-April 2013. She'd only been gone a few weeks. I was headed to a Christian women's small business meeting. I almost didn't go because I didn't really have the $50 to pay for this small table where I could put my shingle out as a publishing coach and offer to help women write that book that they'd been churning on and dreaming about. And Anna Quesada, who ran that organization, said, hey, you can owe me the $50, just come on. And that day was a defining moment in God giving me back my voice. As I talked to different ladies who came by my little spot, the last person who stopped by was Karen from KSLR, the Salem radio station in San Antonio. We chatted for a bit as I mentioned a few authors she might like to interview. And as the ladies started making their way over to their seats for the program to begin, Karen just looked at me and said, well, how'd you like to have a radio show? Everything in me screamed at those words. I'd let go of my desire to do radio, and here was God dropping it in my lap. Literally, I was completely lightheaded, dizzy. I'm like, let me pray about it and get back to you. But I was so just amazed. I turned around and I just shot up a quick prayer and said, Lord, is this you? And he quickly reminded me that he'd just spoken through a friend who said the day before, God is getting ready to do new things in you. I put that together with the prophetic picture of the golden microphone and with some additional encouragement and prayer. I felt sure that that was God leading. Over the next few weeks, I met with the station manager, fleshed out a theme, name of the show, Always Faithful Radio. And I had from 11 to noon that slot on Saturdays. I struggled with thinking that they wouldn't want me if they knew about my past and my 13-year detour into deception and all the fake news online that made me look like some kind of a nutcase. But nothing could have been further from the truth. They were excited to give me an opportunity to minister to the women of San Antonio about the faithfulness of God. And that I did. I invited incredible men and women of God to join me in proclaiming His goodness, even after debilitating loss and trauma. Each week, I would invite my listeners to meet me at a local restaurant with one of my guests. The second guest on the show was in studio, and we would continue the conversation over lunch. Each week, I was amazed at the people God drew and directed to come to that special time. My first few months on the air, I was able to attend the International Christian Retail Show, the event that my former publishing company pretty much dominated, with a huge booth presenting many new titles for book buyers from across the nation. Only now, I attended as media and spent my entire time interviewing some of my favorite best-selling authors and recording artists. I was also able to partner with Women of Joy. There was a conference that they put on in San Antonio, and since I'd given the event a lot of press on my radio show and gave away tickets and interviewed some of the speakers, I was entitled to what they call stage time, where I would be able to promote my radio show and my ministry. And when I asked if I could introduce Liz Curtis Higgs, since we had lots of history together, the manager said, well, we can't really do that. She has a pre-recorded introduction that was required by her management company. But you know what? I know what we can do. We can just have you introduce Chris Tomlin before his concert on Saturday night. How would that work? And I nearly fell over. Like they didn't know that Chris Tomlin's song Faithful was the theme song of my radio show. So God showed up in so many ways during my time on that radio station in San Antonio as He gave me back my voice. My voice that had been silenced and condemned by those who masqueraded as God's people. But now He had opened up the airwaves with an opportunity to declare His faithfulness. So hey, thank you for joining me today. I sure would appreciate it if you would like, follow, share, comment on the episode, maybe even connect with me. I would love to hear how God is working in your life. My name is Athena Dean Holtz, and this is Redeemed and Restored. Thanks for joining us today on the Redeemed and Restored video broadcast, brought to you by me, Athena Dean Holtz, who happens to be a horse lover, and the Romans 828 bookstore, which is a division of Redemption Press, which is right down the street that way, around the corner, right here in downtown Enumclaw, where everything is happening. So I would love to have you review and share this broadcast with friends, family, and others who could use the encouragement. And if you know someone who might prefer the audio podcast version of today's episode, you can go over to redeemedandrestoredpodcast.com and share a link from there. So thank you so much for joining me today. See you next week right here on YouTube for another episode of Redeemed and Restored.